Start small.
Yeah.
Don't try and boil the ocean as we sometimes try to do. And just do one or two things a week that your future self is going to thank yourself for.
And so when we lean into our values, our themes, the themes that we need to focus on will probably come quite naturally.
Yeah, hope is a terrible business strategy. And I think it's the same in the realm of personal change and transformation.
And that kind of ties into just making sure that you're focusing on showing up versus showing up perfectly.
Welcome, everyone, to the Living Richly podcast. We're so glad that you've joined us again. It feels like a long time since the four of us have sat down for a conversation, but I'm really looking forward to today's show. Obviously, this episode for this year anyway will be dropping on January 1st, very first episode of the new year. And of course, that's the time of year everyone's thinking resolutions, making changes to our lives. And our goal over the next couple of conversations is to provide the nation with some really great advice on how they can perhaps set themselves up differently this year than how most of us. As a matter of fact, I think you were kidding around that by the time we shoot the second one or the second episode,
most people have already failed.
They've already on their resolutions.
Right. Well, and there is that notion of whatever it is by January 18th, I think is what the actual kind of the stats say is that most people have failed. Blue Monday.
Yeah.
They've failed at all of their resolutions and they've given up for the year.
That's right. It's like, wow. That's right. It's like, so I guess what we're wanting to say is don't do it that way, right? Like there are better ways to do this. But let's start off with this whole notion of trying to make sweeping changes to your life versus steady eddy progress, small incremental changes that are more sustainable. What do you guys think about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's so often we go into the new year with this big grandiose umbrella statement like I'm gonna get fit, and that's great. That's like a very big umbrella statement. We don't get clear on kind of the how we're going to do that, right? So then we go all in and like, we're like, I'm going to get a gym membership and I'm going to go, right? And then it's like you're trying to do so much so quickly, right? You're in there, you're trying everything. It's almost like the analogy I like to use is like you're running a marathon and you start it by sprinting. Like right. You're never going to get past January 18th right. When you do that. You're just not going to see results. And what we know is to build a successful habit is like 66 days. So that goes far beyond Blue Monday too, if you think about that 3 weeks in. So it's important, I think, to have tangible goals that are more realistic. Maybe like I can go for a 15-minute walk 3 days in a week. Like just give yourself something that you can build on versus this big, broad statement that just feels overwhelming. You're almost setting yourself up for failure.
Yeah. Yeah. I'll add into that progress, it's not about speed, it's about the direction that you're going in. And people ask me all the time, like, how do you stay motivated? And motivation is a byproduct of being consistent. So if you're breaking your goals down into super small chunks and focusing more on the direction instead of how fast you want to go, you're far more apt to not burning yourself out and being successful.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Well, I think it's a lot like business, right? I mean, we work with a lot of business leaders and owners in our coaching business, and there's actually research behind this. There's I think it was a study by McKinsey that said that companies that aim for like 10 to 25% growth year over year tend to be far more profitable than companies that go after like record-breaking profits over a short period of time that they can't sustain. And you and I have seen it time and time again. I mean, let's face it, a lot of leaders, a lot of companies are playing way below their potential. But we encourage that incremental step-by-step growth that you can actually sustain over time, because fast growth can actually lead to all kinds of problems and can lead to actually cause a company to implode. Well, and I think it's the same for personal goals.
Yeah, agreed.
Using fitness, for example, like a lot of people, they lose weight fast.
Right.
Well, what happens 9 times out of 10 is they gain back even more than what they lost originally. Now, I think there is a bit of a both and on this one, because I think you can sometimes jump in with that big audacious goal and kind of go at it. One of the things Wendy and I like to do is a program 75 Hard. It is friggin' intense. Yeah. It's big, right? 2 45-minute workouts a day, all of that. But we've already set the foundation because we're consistently going to the gym and doing that stuff,
Right.
that you're able to then jump in and do something major. So I think for somebody to set a big goal, as long as it's building on habits they've already formed, I would never recommend a program like 75 Hard to somebody who has literally been sitting on the couch for the last 3 years and says, I need to get in shape. I'm going to do this program to get in shape. You're probably going to fail within a few days, because there's so much in a program like that. Even there, at the end of it, you're tired. And we just came off of doing the challenge. And sure enough, we go through a week where we're almost kind of going the opposite direction, right? We're making up for 75 days.
Oh, I was with you on your first day where you were drinking again, and I think in one day you undid 75 days of not drinking. It was quite epic. We were in California meeting some new people for the first time, and even the Australians were impressed.
Yeah. We set the bar high for Canadians. Yeah.
They're like, you Canadians, I tell you, you can really. So I guess what we're saying is this year, if there's some advice we give you right off the bat, is skip the sprint. Steady wins the race. Like, it's better to make. I love actually the analogy of, if you've got an established framework of habits and structure in your life to support taking that to the next level, then go for it. If you're trying to build a new habit, do something that's not been part of your routine, then you're probably better to start small. Let's talk about resolutions. I don't think we need to spend a lot of time here, but because I think most people, when you tell them do resolutions work, I think the vast majority of people say no, they don't.
Yeah.
But let's talk about what's wrong with traditional New Year's resolutions.
I just think that they don't account for mindset. They don't account for the process. They focus more on the outcome. So I want to be this or have this or do this, but the process isn't thought through,
right,
or planned out. And that's just pattern of behavior.
Right.
Because that kind of stuff will never stick if you're not identifying what the actual process, like what's your roadmap, what's your GPS.
Yeah, I love that. I've heard it said that resolutions are like wishes without a blueprint, right?
Yeah.
And we say it all the time in the realm of business. I tell my leaders all the time, well, I hope this is going to happen next year. I want this to happen. Like, hope is a terrible business strategy. And I think it's the same in the realm of personal change and transformation.
Yeah. I mean, I would add to that, I think they're just too vague. I mean, I said this earlier, but if it's too broad and it's not specific enough, and if it's not specific enough and tied to something you think is achievable, then you're running on willpower, and willpower runs out apparently on January 18th. So I would know that.
It does. Well, and we've had Dr. Sherry on the show a number of times, has introduced us to cognitive.
We should have her back. It's been a while.
I think we should. Cognitive behavior therapy, right? All of this notion of all of our actions, all of the outcomes of what we do stem out of the beliefs that we have.
Yeah,
and I think that's the biggest mistake with most resolutions. I would encourage people, rather than set a resolution, I'm going to lose 20 pounds.
Yeah.
To set a resolution that says, I'm going to start to believe I'm healthy.
Right.
And to change beliefs. And if you change beliefs, outcomes they'll happen.
Yeah.
They will happen when you change the thinking and mindset, as you talked about. And I think that's where we miss it, is we're so focused on the outcome with a resolution, and we don't have the pathway to get there, but we also don't even have the thinking and the beliefs that will help transform us into that.
And let's not forget that January is actually one of the worst times of the year to try to make big changes, right? Days are shorter, at least for those of us here in Canada.
Yeah.
Days are shorter, energy's lower, and the winter blues can be a thing, right? Can really sap your motivation.
Unless you're going to set a resolution to sleep more.
Well, there you go. Yeah.
January.
You're winning. You're winning like day one. You're winning.
Sign me up.
I'm gonna drink more.
I'm gonna drink more. I'm gonna sleep more. I mean, like that. Oh my God, we just solved this whole issue. You heard it here first on the Living Richly podcast. Sleep,
I'm going to gain 20 pounds.
Gain 20 pounds. Oh my God. The other piece, seriously though, if we get back to actually serious content, is the brain actually resists sudden change. It sees it as almost as the immunity to change work by Keegan and Leahy. Highly recommend that as a resource to anyone who's trying to
put it in the show.
Seeking genuine personal change and understanding that just like your body builds up an immunity, think of someone who's just had or is wanting to have an organ transplanted into their body, and they actually have to account for the fact that the body will see that new organ as an invading presence and we'll try to like kill it, right? Kill it off.
Yeah.
And they have to, use drugs and everything else. We have the same resistance to change. So this idea of massive sweeping change in a short period of time, the brain just doesn't really register that. And it makes it hard for us to absorb it, right?
100%. 100%. That's why it gets so overwhelming. That's why you feel that sense of like,
Wait, can you do that again?
I can't.
Slow motion, please.
I can't repeat
I can't wait to see how the transcript comes out around how you spell that.
Awesome.
That's how it feels in my body.
Yeah.
I'm going to screenshot.
I got to screenshot that. Then there's a couple more that came to mind for me is the all or nothing trap, right?
Yeah.
That if I can't come out of the gate strong, then my whole year is over, right? I've failed. And how many posts did I see last year and I've seen for so many years? Early in January, mid-January, people start posting, well, I'll try again next year. That we're actually giving up on things that we actually want. Because I think what's right about resolutions is the reflective part where we start thinking about what we want and the changes that we want to make. It's just in its application, I think. And I'd say this, if your resolutions are based on just fixing what's wrong instead of building on what's strong. Right. It's so a shame-based, guilt-based sort of thing. Like, I don't like the way I look, so I'm going to lose weight, right? It's not going to be very motivating.
Well, hey, listen, we even talk about it in business, right? You need to know what your why is. You need to know there's got to be something more compelling. You talk to a business owner, what's your goal for this year? To make more money. Well, right. What is that?
Yeah.
Right. And you've got to get, and so even for somebody who I want to lose weight, well, why do you want to lose weight? Why does it matter? And if you can get into that more compelling reason, again, that's when you start to move to the beliefs and you start to shift your thinking around things rather than just, I need to lose this weight because I'm fat. Right. Well, to your point, that's shame. And at some point you will just fail on that.
Yeah. 100%.
That mindset is so critical.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The reality is too, before we move on to our next question, is I think a big flaw in our traditional approach to making resolutions or setting resolutions. I haven't done them in years. I don't believe in them, but they're still a big thing this time of year. And that's why we're having this conversation. They don't account for real life challenges. Like they don't account for actual real life. They tend to be set in concrete. They tend to be very rigid. And who knows what's going to happen? We never know what's going to show up on our doorstep. And I think then people feel, not only are they perhaps facing some adversity or a very difficult challenge they hadn't anticipated, but now they feel guilt that they're not also meeting the grade of that they were aiming for, right?
Yeah. Well, they set their expectations so high with most of these, to your point, that you don't give yourself any wiggle room for the unexpected.
Right.
And life is filled with unexpected.
One thing that's consistent is that life is inconsistent.
Exactly. Yeah. So if you're not incorporating that into your strategies and your plan for how you're going to accomplish the things that you want to, the changes you want to make in your life, if you're not allowing for that, same in business, right? We know that people have talked for years about IQ. We've talked often about EQ, your emotional intelligence. And what we discovered during COVID was the businesses that thrived and were successful during COVID had an adaptability quotient. Yeah. They had an AQ. And they were able to make those adjustments, make those shifts on the fly. Well, that's just as true in our personal lives. If you really want to be successful in making changes in your life, you better have a strong AQ, a strong adaptability quotient.
Well, let's take that further because and if we shift the language maybe from resolutions to intentions that I'm setting for my life this year, how could our listeners set intentions that are more flexible, adaptable, sustainable?
Well, I think you have to embrace the flexibility part. Like you have to be okay that it's not gonna roll out exactly as you intended. Exactly what you guys just talked about. Life comes at you from all different angles all the time. So if you have it set in stone, I keep using the gym, but it's a very common one. I'm going to the gym 5 days a week and all of a sudden you can't go on Friday because your daughter's sick or whatever. And then you use that as a reason to be like, okay, well, I'm done, right? We're all kind of searching for excuses at times. You have to be flexible. And I think if you're flexible, I think that's when you're intelligently adapting. And I think when you look at it that way, it's like, oh, okay, this is just me needing to adapt and be flexible around my intention. You can shift your intention. It doesn't have to stay so fixed because life is not fixed. And that's where I think it gets unrealistic. And I think that's when we always fall down.
Yeah.
One word that I love that's kind of tied into what you said is the word pivot. So learning how to pivot where you know, we have it in our heads on how it's supposed to be and how it's supposed to go. Not that having a vision in your head isn't important, but I think we get really tied to, if it doesn't go this way, then I failed and I'm doing everything wrong. And so how do we learn how to pivot and also recognize that everything that we see online is typically not what's happening in real life.
100%.
Right. Well, we're seeing people's highlight reel.
Yeah.
We're not seeing their real life.
No, we never do.
The I another part of this, and we've talked about it so often in the show, is the notion of radical self-acceptance. When you show compassion and love for yourself, when you don't go to the gym on the Friday, using the example, right? Here's what often happens. Oh, I messed up. Now I'm out of rhythm. I might as well order a double, a pizza, and I'm going to have Dairy Queen, and right. But that's what we do. We end up just, I failed. I might as well just go extreme rather than.
I just did it because I like pizza.
Well, but that's a different reason. See, it's intentions. It's all its intentions, right? But we heap on the guilt, and then we're like, we might as well just give up completely. Yeah. Radical self-acceptance says, hey, you know what? You missed the mark today. Tomorrow's a new day. Right. And you're able to move forward from that without all of the guilt and the shame that comes from the self-talk, the negative self-talk.
I think the intentions themselves are in many ways like we're setting a vision for our lives. What do I want my life to look like in 2025, for example, right? And we're identifying areas of our life that we want to shift, we want to change, we want to improve. No different than a company needs to have a vision of what it's becoming. I often challenge my clients to say, like, what does the business look like in 3 to 5 years? What do you anticipate? And they usually come back with what sounds like a mission statement. Well, we exist to. I said, no, that's not what I'm asking. I'm not asking why you get out of bed in the morning to do what you do. That's your mission. I'm asking about what are you becoming? What's that vision for your business in 3 to 5 years? How many markets are you going to be in? How many staff are you going to have? How many locations? What kind of revenue you're driving? How are your products and services morphing and changing and evolving? That's vision. It's creating a picture. And I think that's what those intentions do. But even in the world of business, even though I encourage get that 3 to 5 to 10 year view of where you're going, make your plans a lot more short term, like for the next year, let's say, right? And practice adaptive goal setting, that you set goals that are, their outcome is to achieve that vision, but they take into account changing markets. I have one client right now, they, for the first time ever in their history, they've seen a major downturn in their final quarter. Well, that wasn't in their business plan. This was a market conditions that have led to this. It was beyond their control. So they're having to adapt their plans significantly. And I remember one of the owners saying, I feel like we've failed our people. And we had a big conversation about that, right? About how that language is so disempowering. But I think we do that in our lives when we don't adapt to what's happening in our lives. Adaptive goal setting is you set the goal, you learn from what's happening and you tweak it. I
love that language, and I've not heard you share it before using that exact phrase. Immediately the visual that came to mind was how a lot of newer cars today have adaptive cruise control.
Right. I have that.
Right.
It's phenomenal.
So, right.
It's you.
Yeah. No, it can't.
I'm like, you're not driving the car.
Exactly.
It'll even brake and stop the
100%.
car.
And that's the beauty of it, is that you set it at, let's say, 100 kilometers an hour, right? You're setting that thing, but then all of a sudden unexpected things happen.
Yeah.
And what is the adaptive cruise control? Automatically, it slows it down and it keeps your pace moving at to fit the circumstances that you're in. So
with
adaptive
great
language.
Cruise, I love that analogy. It will slow down to the traffic ahead of you, but sometimes if you're not paying attention, all of a sudden someone who's driving slower is setting your pace.
Yes.
So an adaptive goal setting, make sure you don't fall into somebody else's pace. Make sure all you need to do to break that is just change lanes and you're back up.
We have
to your
another whole
speed.
episode we can do just on adaptive goal setting.
Adaptive goal setting.
I'm super
still
excited.
stuck on the
Okay,
I'm still stuck on the cruise control.
I know, it's
Is
crazy.
this cruise
What is
control?
this?
What is this thing? What is this technology called cruise
So the way
control?
Wendy drives, she's never really behind anyone.
I've heard. Yeah. There's an entire Facebook group about Wendy's driving. And moving on to the next one. What would you guys say to someone? I referred to it earlier. You come out of the gates, you mess up, you don't quite make the grade of what you were trying to achieve with your resolution, and now you feel like your whole year is ruined because you've not stuck to your plan. What would you say to people who are thinking?
First thing I would say is, again, January 1st is such an arbitrary number, right? We use it just because, well, it's the start of a new year and it's the start of a new month. Well, if we want to use that argument, guess what? There's a January 31st and a February 1st.
There really?
There really is. I looked it up.
But there really isn't a February 31st.
No.
January 31st.
Oh, I heard February 31st. I was like,
February 1st. Right? And so the reality is that if you want to use arbitrary dates, there's another set date, a reset date every month. So if you drop the ball in January, hey, guess what? February 1st is just around the corner.
Yeah.
And then March 1st is around the corner. And have that mindset of being able to say, I can set any date as a start date.
Yeah. And I think to build on that, you can talk yourself out of any start date. Like I think we put January, and it's like, oh, it's so much pressure. And then it's like, we're wired to find a reason to not follow through, right? Yeah. Just to talk ourselves out of it, whether we know it or not, it's happening. So whether it's January 1st or February 31st, and you're talking yourself out of it,
yeah.
But
that's the leap
year, triple leap year. Yeah,
your mind will believe what you tell it.
100%,
right? So.
100%.
To that point, how many times do you have somebody in fitness, right, where they say, "Okay, I'm going to start. I want to get healthy, but I got 3 parties coming up, so I'm going to start on this date, right? Why not now? Why not today? Well, I'll start on this date. There's always a reason.
Yeah, and that kind of ties into just making sure that you're focusing on showing up versus showing up perfectly. So, those two things are very, very different. Progress over perfection.
Yeah, I love that. It's momentum should be our goal, not sticking to our plan fully. I think this whole thing of, I've wrecked my year, see you next year. I think it's a bullshit excuse that we use to keep next yearing our transformation and living our full potential. To your point, you can pick any time, any day. Every day is a new day, right? Yeah. Leave yesterday, and today's a fresh new day. We can start fresh. But this notion, again, I think of resolution sets people up for this unrealistic expectation that just doesn't work. We are in a marathon, not a sprint. In a sprint, if you're running the 100 meter and you mess up coming out of the gate, if you fuck up the start, you're done. You lose. Yeah. There's not enough time typically to recover. But in a marathon, you can stumble several times during the race. It's that steady momentum. Just keep showing up every day. And if you fall down, get back up.
And in fact, in a marathon, the people who start out strong are rarely the ones who win.
Right.
You always see the winner of the marathon is usually somebody who's back in the pack for 3/4 of the race.
Yeah. Yeah. So, yeah. Well, let's go deeper on this, because as we were preparing for this show and I was really wanting to give our listeners different approaches, different lenses to look at this time of year through, I came across this whole idea of using January as a practice month, right? It's sort of like your warm-up month for 2025, as opposed to putting all your eggs in the basket of, I better get it right in January or else I failed my year. It's like your warm-up, just like when you go to the gym, and we've been talking a lot about that. Obviously, it's on our minds.
I love it. Like, I was like, I'm like, oh, it's such a great way to look at it. It almost like immediately just takes all the pressure off. You're like, okay, I'm going to try some things. So we're using fitness a lot because it's one, but like, let's say you want to get more fit. There's your umbrella statement. Okay, now I'm going to try some stuff. Maybe I'm going to try yoga. Maybe I don't know. I'm just going to go walk outside, but you get to try some different and get a feel for what is aligned to what makes you happy, right? Yeah. So if you can find a connection that brings you joy, then you're more likely to do it. You don't want to go like, I'm not a yoga human. I don't like yoga. It's not my thing. I know that. So to go into the new
hot
year,
yoga. You'd love hot yoga.
I don't like you. No, don't like yoga.
And all the hot yoga lovers just unsubscribe from the show.
I'm like, fill your boots if that's what works for you. Yeah. So, but try different things. And it's almost like you're giving yourself permission to try different things without the pressure of like wanting to love hot yoga if you don't. And I think that is so freeing. Like, I love that idea.
Well, it's a journey of discovery.
Yeah.
So you use that time to take some time to explore and discover.
Yeah, I really like that.
Yeah, about curiosity and growth instead of just results, right? I think results matter. I think in our experimentation, I've talked about this before on the show, my journey, people telling me back in the day when I didn't know how to turn things off and I only lived to work, and people would tell me, Deshaun, you need to go get a hobby. And I used to find that phrase so frustrating, because a hobby to me is like you're making a commitment, right?
Yeah.
Like I'm going to start this thing, and then if it doesn't work out or I don't like it, then somehow again it's failure. Well, I think January is a practice month in the same way. If you're going to try something, get ready to push through discomfort because it's new.
Yeah.
So it's not necessarily going to feel great right out of the gate, right? Especially if it's something like exercise that, no pain, no gain there, right? To some degree. But it's this notion of curiosity. Does this align with me? Is this sustainable? Is this something I actually enjoy? Is it life-giving? And if it's not, then once you've pushed through, I say, give it a good, give it a chance.
Yeah.
And don't quit after your first try unless it's clearly not for you.
Yeah.
Like if I tried hot yoga once, I don't even think I need to try it to know I don't like it.
I bet you love it.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, I
don't know. I don't like being warm.
Yes. Well,
I run hot to begin
you do.
with.
You do.
I think I would pass out or something. Or I would just complain the whole time and make everybody else's experience miserable.
Yeah. And yeah. I'm just going to.
I love
yoga used to be relaxing.
Like you, I love the concept of the practice month. And it reminded me of our personal Bill of Rights. We've talked about it. Is that the Art of Everyday Assertiveness? Assertiveness
Great
book. And the notion of I have the right to change my mind. And the concept of a practice month is exactly that. And you described it so well, Kate, in that there's a dozen, if not more, ways to lose 20 pounds.
Yeah.
So you have the right to change your mind. I'm going to try this. I can right to change my mind. And that freedom that comes from that is it takes all that pressure off us.
Yeah. 100%. So what are some examples of daily habits or routines that let's explore this a little deeper. If someone would say, well, what would a practice month look like? What are some habits or routines a person might experiment with?
Yeah, there's tons. I mean, I lean to gratitude because obviously I lean to gratitude, but I think daily gratitude practice is a great foundation, regardless of, if you also are wanting to get more fit, if you're wanting to drink less. Gratitude is kind of like a grounding practice that you take 2 minutes in the morning to do. You can write down something you're grateful for. You can do it at the end of the day, and it really helps with your mindset. So for me, that's a huge one. If you struggle with it, there's Get You Mindset has 5 steps to unlocking gratitude. It's a free guide. Go online, download it. There's a course you can use that can help walk you through it if you're not sure how. And I have gratitude cards coming out, which I'm really excited about.
So exciting.
Which is a 2-second exercise. You shuffle a deck, you pick a card, you read out, and I get 2 statements. You know what? I get to go for a walk today. I get to give my kids a hug today. And that just grounds you in gratitude. And getting your mind right is number one, I think, when it comes to kind of rolling out any type of big change.
I love that. We'll put links in the show notes to all of that. The cards are really exciting because that's the newest.
Cool.
I encourage a reflective reset. And that can be something you do either daily, and either you do it at the end of the day or beginning of the day, where you just, or at beginning of the week or the end of a week. Actually, for many of my clients, one of them, I just had this conversation not long ago, and he's this big, strong, very successful owner of a big construction company. And we started talking about the practice of reflection. And so he's currently experimenting he sets a meeting with himself in his calendar during work hours. On Friday, a half-hour meeting with me. And what he does is he just sits and he reflects on what went well this week, what didn't go well this week, what would I like to do different next week, right? It's a simple check with yourself. And whether you do this as a work thing, I encouraged him to do it as a work thing, because I said make this your business, make it part of your business is to actually work on yourself and be reflecting and identifying areas you can change. So I think reflection plays a big role.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah. I had something in there. But no, I think, those small reminders to block time out for ourselves, but they don't have to be big things. I'm a big believer in using the reminders app. It sounds so. One of my favorite things, and I'll say this to gym members all the time, is, some of the easiest things are easy to do, but easier not to do. So 5 minutes of stretching or foam rolling, or 5 minutes of gratitude, super, super simple, but so much easier to not do it. And I think building those little, we could call them movement snacks or gratitude snacks throughout the day, where your reminders app is popping up, where it forces you to just stop, take 5 minutes and do what you need to do. And it's just the power of consistency on those habits over and over.
I need to start setting it just to remember to eat.
Right.
Because I'll go the entire day and not
But
eat.
That's a big thing.
Yeah.
I just had a conversation with somebody about that last week. She's like, I go from, because we get so busy, we get so consumed, we're on our calls, on our computers. She's like, holy shit, I go from like 9 o'clock till 4 without eating. And then I wonder why I'm overeating at night because I'm so hungry. And it's, the reminders app sounds so simple, but it's a tool.
Well, I love it because I use regularly with my clients when they're trying to work on a new skill or change something about how they show up as a leader. They'll identify the goal. One of my clients, his goal was to speak up more in meetings. He is in a family business. He's the son, and he was getting feedback from his other senior leaders that he just buries his head in his notepad during meetings and barely ever speaks up. So we went to work on a lot of the mindset stuff and the fear behind that and the insecurities that he had. And then we said, but we need to start practicing the new behavior. So I call them visual interrupts. So the app is like an interrupt, like the reminders app. It interrupts what you're doing. It reminds you. For him, it was, since you already bury your head in your notepad, let's use that to your advantage. I said, when you go into every meeting, I want you to write at the top of your notepad the phrase in big bold letters, speak up more. Right? Nice. So as a visual reminder, because huge. When push comes to shove, our intentions give way to our habits, right? 100%. And so we have to break out of the autopilot. So he started doing that.
I think.
And every time he looked down to like hide from the meeting like he had been doing before, his notepad was coaching him in real time. Speak up more. And then there are days where he would speak up more, other days where his insecurities took over and he didn't. And that's okay. That was part of the process, is you're not going to get it right every time. But he wasn't forgetting. When he wasn't speaking up because of fear or whatever else, it was a choice he was making in that moment. Very different than I just keep forgetting to eat during the day. Right? Like I love it.
We used to do that with new coaches when they joined the team. We would have them in their notes when they're doing prospect meetings or even coaching sessions, write the word wait.
Yeah.
Right. Why am I talking?
Why am I talking?
As a reminder of don't take over the conversation, but allow others to jump in, allow others to, as the whoever you're working with, ask questions that pull their conversation out. And so I think that's a brilliant one as well.
Yeah. Another concept that came across was this idea of setting a theme for the week, right? So we talk a lot about daily intentions, but what seems to be gaining some traction is this notion of like, for the week, this week I'm leaning into, what do you guys think about that weekly theme or focus type approach?
I think I just go back to flexibility. Not every week is going to be the same. Not every day is going to be the same, especially in the society that we live in today. And I think it allows you to embrace that flexibility. As long as you're not falling into the trap of Tuesday comes around and you haven't done the few things that you want to do. And then you fall into the mindset of, one tire's flat and then you're not going to go slash the other 3. You pick up and you keep moving on. So I think flexibility and adaptability for the weekly, and it's less overwhelming than monthly.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I agree with that. I mean, the analogy that came to my mind was like, when you're going to buy a dress for an event and you need the right dress, and this is like a very basic analogy, but you need the right dress because I don't know, you're going to a wedding, maybe it can't be white, it can't be this, it can't be that. It's finding what fits. So I think it's almost like, it's not like you go and try the first dress on. You're like, well, it happens, but it's rarely happens. You try the first dress on.
To me all the
this
time.
Is the one.
Right.
So I think it's that kind of like trying different things on, and you got to find the one that fits and the one that makes you feel good as when you get the dress and you know it's the one, you're like, yes, you feel it. And I think it's the same thing. So it's just kind of the, chunking it down and giving yourself permission again to try.
Yeah, and I love that. I would say on the flip side of it is the caution of don't get into the trap of the new shiny object, right? Like sometimes we shift out of the focus. When I set a new theme or a focus, I also determine what kind of time frame do I need to give myself to see this happen. Yeah. And so sometimes I might not be setting a new theme every week. It might be the next 3 weeks it's going to be on this because it's going to take 3 weeks to get some traction going. And we want to kind of some ways protect ourselves from jumping to the next thing too quick.
Right.
There's always going to be a nicer dress. There's always, right? And so it's 100%. Being able to recognize and say, no, this is where I'm going to focus on now. And I'm going to work it.
Nice, Rob.
What was that?
I'm looking at the dress.
At hip swivel?
Is that what that was?
I'm going to work this dress.
That didn't work.
No.
That required far too much explanation.
Steve can edit that out. Steve!
Hey. I think what I like about whether it's a week or 30 days, whatever the case may be, is that, again, it is far more, I think the theme or the focus or your efforts are far more relevant to what's actually happening in your life right now. I remember a client who set a goal. They really struggled with communication in their company, about 80 employees and been around for about 25 years at the time. And communication was a problem. And I remember telling them, like, it's a problem with every organization. We have literally worked with thousands of organizations now. I have yet to meet one that over communicates, right? Like it's a communication problem everywhere. But he was so frustrated by it that he declared that the following year, this was like in December or something, that the following year would be the year of communication. And I thought, okay, that's very inspiring, right? Well, by February, I was checking in with him on how that's going, and he hadn't talked about it. There'd been no communication.
No communication
Around the communication plan, but on their newsletter, it was still like, and I forget what year it was, the year of communication. I'm like, not so good. But I think we do that with resolutions is we're making these sweeping statements in December about what we want the entire year to look like. But again, we have created these false moments in time. Like how's December different from November or different from July? And so I think when you set the target shorter, when you shorten the horizon, I think you can set goals that are far more motivational, far more relevant to what's happening in your life.
Yeah.
That do force you to, I agree, not jump around from thing to thing, but we're not making the horizon so long that we lose sight of what we did.
I read a really interesting book a couple of months ago now. It was called The 90-Day Year. And the whole premise of it is a business book, and it's around the idea that when businesses set yearly goals, what happens is you often January, February, you just kind of coast. You don't until you're under the pressure of the, all of a sudden in September, October, or more even November and December, you're like, everybody's going full tilt trying to hit the goal. We got to hit it before the end of whatever the calendar year is for them. And the idea of the 90-day year is kind of thinking of your year as 90 days.
Yeah. And that's actually where we're going next, which is another practice is, again, for some people, it might be a quarter, like setting and for this quarter, what I love about doing it that way is think on business, right? When we go back to how we help businesses establish what's that 3 to 5 year window in terms of your vision, what you're becoming, but then we help them break it down into what's your strategic plan for next year to move towards that. So because they break it down into the year, then they're not trying to achieve everything that they see for the next 3 to 5 years all in the following year. No, we get clear on what are the steps, what are the goals you should set, what are the results you need to see in your business that'll move you towards that vision. And once we get clear on those, all right, what are we working on in Q1? What are we working on in Q2, Q3, Q4? So then all of a sudden, when we enter the year, we're not carrying the weight of all the whole year's goals and on our shoulders, right? We have said, no, we're not worrying about that till Q4. Yeah. And again, back to adaptive goal setting, as new things show up in the business that challenge the plan, then the plan has to adjust and to tweak it. So I think quarterly themes, again, just another creative way to not feel like you need to work on everything simultaneously.
Totally.
Right?
We just did an exercise with Bold Lip where setting out really our pipeline for next year and what it needs to look like against our revenue goals. And we've never done that with pipeline, right? So we've done it with revenue, but not pipeline. So now this is the first year, and now we have quarterly targets that we have to hit. And we saw the quarterly number and we're all like, whoa, like that's a big number. And we're all like, it's not even the year number, right? Because your pipeline generally is 3 to 1 of your revenue. So we're looking at it and we're like, okay. And that motivates us, to your point, Rob, right until March. We're not even thinking full year.
Yeah.
We're thinking that quarter.
Yep.
And I think personally, having a quarter is a nicer target, because when we go back to making new habits, and habits are set in 66 days. So you think about a quarter, you've got 90 days. 90 days.
90 days.
90.
Welcome to the down under. That's not a knife.
I don't know. That was other Kate. Just
You were channeling Aussie Kate there. That was kind of sexy.
A little,
actually.
you like that? Yeah,
I
won't
do.
repeat that.
We'll,
Okay.
we'll revisit this later.
Will we? Okay. All righty. But if you think about it, 90 days, right? So 66 days, you created a new habit. As much as you get up out of bed and you brush your teeth, right? We just do it. We don't really think about it. It's the same way I think about gratitude. If you've been doing a gratitude practice every morning for 90 days, it's just something you do now. So to reintroduce even something else after 90 days, you're like, oh, that's just habit now. It's just what I do now. You can introduce something else.
Yes,
something
I love
more.
that.
Yeah.
Let's talk about whether it's a weekly theme, a quarterly theme. I think, again, this whole idea of shortening the horizon just seems to make so much more sense to me. I remember when I first saw it all, I said, oh, where's this been my whole life, as opposed to this other view that seems to take the whole year all at once. But what are some themes that, regardless of the time frame, what are some themes that people might explore that might help them start the year strong?
Start with your goals. And I would say, if you haven't done it already, I would encourage you. January 1st is a great day to start the 15-day Life Vision Challenge, because you will get crystal clear on your values. You'll get clear on what matters to you. You'll get clear on things like the rituals that you can start to embrace in your life. And you'll find the themes that will resonate with you if you tie them into your values.
Yeah.
Right.
100%.
So I have a value. One of my values is community. So for me, a very practical theme that I could set a intention or resolution around might be to engage with my theme or my community more often. Right. And so when we lean into our values, our themes, the themes that we need to focus on will probably come quite naturally.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. I would say values speaks really, really clearly for me as well. And I think things that serve us, but also getting really clear on what your non-negotiables are. We spend a lot of time, which is awesome, about the things that we want. But what about the things that we don't want, and the things that we are like, and sometimes those things that we say no to can be really hard.
Yeah.
And it's choosing your own personal happiness and satisfaction over the opinions or disappointment of other people, which typically don't last long anyways. So I think really getting clear on your boundaries around what your non-negotiables are.
I love that, because I think a lot of times people are looking to add to their life in the new year. But sometimes what we need is a detox.
Yeah.
We need to go through our life and do a cleanse, right? Cleanse of things that don't serve us well, relationships that don't serve us well.
Yeah. And sometimes it's just a continuation of what we're already doing. Like, how about like a congratulations on a great year and the progress you've made? And how about just like, I want to stay where I feel good right here. I'm feeling like celebrate that win, and then just keep the momentum into the new year. Sometimes it's not always about upping.
Yeah.
It's about maintaining and keeping and
100%.
Yeah.
For me, this year, definitely a theme is upping and leveling up and upgrading around the realm of relationships. Got just clear on how in business I'd gotten so comfortable, and building a successful business and working well. And so for me, a major theme for me is surrounding myself with people who make me think bigger, who encourage me to grow, who really, now that's not comfortable, because you get around people like that, it's gonna probably poke at every insecurity you have because you feel less than, but that's a lie you tell yourself, right? But I think the themes are highly relevant to what a person is going through. And I think, again, I would agree 100% that when you know who you are and what you stand for, then being able to say, well, for this period of time, I'm going to lean into this. You're not just grasping at straws. You're actually leaning into your true self and saying, I'm going to be more deliberate about this aspect of what really makes me come alive for this period of time, right? Rather than the whole year long. Guys, this has been an amazing conversation. We've got a whole other one follow-up plan to this. We're going to go even deeper into this stuff, but we're going to close. We're going to do a lightning round here. Final word advice for this particular show on starting strong. Final word of advice to our listeners.
Whether you're calling it resolution, whether you're calling it an intention, whether you're calling it a theme, whatever it is, wrap it in self-compassion and that the radical self-acceptance. It is the most important characteristic or element that we can include when we're trying to set goals, is to be compassionate with ourselves as we're going through the process, because things will change. We will fall short at times. All of that's going to happen, and how we show up for ourselves and the story we tell ourselves is going to make all the difference to what we do next.
Yeah, love that.
Yeah.
Love that.
I
Yeah.
think I often say this on the show, but start small. Just start.
Just start.
I often say that too, but and just start small.
Yeah.
Don't try and boil the ocean, as we sometimes try to do, and just do one or two things a week that your future self is going to thank yourself for.
Yeah, love that. Love that.
I would say self-reflection. Really look in the mirror and get crystal clear on the things that typically the things that we don't want to see or don't want to admit are typically the things that we need to, not need to, but is an opportunity to work on, because momentum in terms of whatever we do, I believe, is tied to our attitude and the self-ownership piece.
Yeah, love that. Love that. I would say whatever decisions you make, don't let it be because of the shoulds, coulds, and have tos. Make the decision, make the intention, set the intention and direction, because it's a reflection of who you are and what you really want. So getting clear on that, I think, is so important. Guys, such a great conversation. And Nation, thank you for joining us again. You're going to want to tune into the next show. It'll be part 2 of this conversation. We're going to dive into these concepts and others even more deeply to really help you start strong this year. As always, we encourage you to like, share, and subscribe to the show and get the word out. Visit our website at livingrichley.me, where you can find out all kinds of cool information about the Living Richly Nation, our Facebook group that just continues to blow up and expand. You can find out about the 15-day Life Vision Challenge, which is a free experience online, and now also links to Kate's gratitude cards. Get 2 cards, and her gratitude journal and her gratitude course. You'll find all of that on our website and more. And until next time, we encourage you to tune in again. And until then, keep on living your best life.